and thank you, Subby, for all of those wonderful tunes that you've been playing for us while waiting. We appreciate it, and good evening, Dinar Updates. This is the call for tonight is January 10th, 2017, and I want to welcome all of you into our call. And how are you doing, guys? Mr. White, our Cookie, Day Trader, how are you guys?
Great ball game last night.
Oh, just absolutely wonderful, Hutch.
Yeah, it was a heck of a ball game. Yeah.
Got to say congrats to Mr. Jim Plants.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's out getting the tractor serviced up from that long trip back up from the Tampa-St. Pete area, back up to the Clemson area, and he's a pretty happy camper along with a lot of other Clemson people right now. So congrats to all of them. Speaking of all of that kind of stuff and excitement and so on, we've had some just exciting stuff happen over these last 7 days or so, I'd say. So what we decided to do was come up with what we call a top 10 list. And when we have what's known as a pre-call a lot of times, and we'll get together and we'll ask each other, if you had to put together, what's your top 10 articles of most importance, relevant to where we are and where we're going and what's happening? And so we came up with the kind of a version of the Johnny Carson thing of a top 10 list, and I started to try to combine the Carnac thing with it, but my mayonnaise jar fell off the counter and broke, so I had to stop. Guys, we put this top 10 list together. We put it into the chat room. We had an incredible amount of people. Probably a larger crowd tonight than we've had in quite some time in the chat room itself. But the participation was just incredibly great. Thank you to everyone in the chat room for that. Lots of questions. I think they enjoyed, the top 10 list. I think they enjoyed, the articles, the headlines with the links, and able to comment on what their favorite article is or what their question may be. And we've got a ton of questions as well. What do you guys think about the news the last 7 days and where we're at?
I think it's a affirmation of what we believe. I don't know, people listen to the call, what they think or what they believe, but as often as we talk, we think it's the information that who they are, the central bank, the government of Iraq, besides the parliament committees and so forth, the World Bank, IMF, and on, ambassadors, heads of banks within Iraq, things that they're saying. We think there's this incredible information that has given us reason to believe even more strongly something's getting ready to happen. But I must say, and thank you very much, Scott, for putting together this list, because when you actually sit down and look at it in front of you, and this is just for the past week and a half. 7 days,
yeah, that's right.
It is incredible. It is incredible to see this information, and I can understand those that may not write this stuff down or follow it as closely, that why they may not be as informed or even as excited. But this is just this is humongous, and I'm telling you, I'm headed to the Caribbean. You guys aren't going to see me.
I like it. I'm going to visit you. Count on that. Mark Cookie, what's your thought about the last 7 days?
I can't overstate it. I don't think it's possible to overstate what's going on here in the recent past. I mean, it is so. We were talking about in the last couple calls about the term convergence reality and
right.
The sort of all of these things running independent of each other, but yet all moving in the same direction towards a defined window here. And the thing that's just to me that's amazing is the fact that the amount of news that is completely, and I mean verbatim, taken out of the the IMF letter of intent and the memorandum of economic and financial policies and the technical memorandum of understanding. And in today's news that we're going to go over tonight, that goes back all the way to the 2014 LOI, and looking at the news stories as they're coming in every single day. You can literally, in one hand, hold your LOIs in one hand, and in the other, your checklist of things as these news stories are coming in, and literally just check them right off. I mean, there's one article in here that we're going to talk about. I don't know if it's the first one or not, Hutch, but that literally, I mean, there's at least 5 things off of there that are directly correlated to mandates and some of the reforms that the IMF has asked of Iraq. So I can't even, just some of these things and the direction and the momentum that the news is traveling right now is breathtaking. So that's
It's good stuff, real good stuff. Day Trader, I know you're back there somewhere.
Oh, I'm hiding here in the background.
How's your arms? Didn't you have a day of golf today?
I did. I did. Actually, I'd be more concerned about my hiney because I landed on it so many times because the wind was blowing about 40 miles an hour.
Oh, boy. Yeah,
put some wings on that. That just made it really enjoyable, and I'll put that in parentheses.
That's right.
This news is that we're seeing is really amazing, and what excites me is it isn't just from one area. I mean, we're getting this from the CBI and all of the banking information and the news about that we're going to be talking about tonight. Then we're getting it from the various ministers of Parliament on the laws that they're bringing into Parliament that they're saying are ready to go. Then we have the economic news with Jordan and apparent solutions with Turkey and the list just is really quite long. And the fact that we're seeing so many different channels coming and heading and converging on one point in time is really, really exciting for me.
Just imagine for a second. Go back in time, if you will, just 12 months. And if you saw a top 10 list like what we just brought into the chat room and we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes, if you saw that list a year ago, 16 months ago, whatever it may be, what would you have said? Any of you?
Waiter, I'll have another pina colada, please.
Yeah, I'll have what he's having. Yeah.
Get my tickets to St. Thomas.
It's good stuff. There's a statement that just came out in the chat room. It says there's an air of excitement on this call. Are you kidding me? You ought to hear the pre-calls that we do privately just trying to get together for this stuff. It's really we are definitely in an exciting time, and
Scott, maybe one of the things we ought to do is as we go over this, maybe besides just saying such and such and such and such, maybe we ought to explain why we think it's worth being excited, or why we think it's important, or what is the significance of it.
Well, and that would be different from what we normally do, because our mantra has always been we just bring the news, we state what the facts are, and we move on. In this case, if we do that, and I'm all for it because I know how we do it when it's just us talking, but if we do, I guess we got to do like some of the other gurus with blue couches do, and they have to state in our opinion or whatever. Or really, I guess really, if we're only explaining why we're excited, then it doesn't matter, does it?
Well, maybe by just explaining the facts, that alone will explain the excitement.
Yeah.
We just stick.
We've always been a factual. We've always been fact-driven, based on news. That type of thing only. But at the same time, these people have been listening to us for over, or somewhere around a year, I guess. And one of the things that they've gotten to know us, and they can hear our tone, and they can hear our excitement, and and where we're at with it. it's up to you guys. If you want to kind of let's explain why we think that. It's just let me go ahead and get my best DJ voice on and put a waiver out there and say this is all in our opinions. And
okay. Well, I will not. I will not put my white.
Hold my finger.
I'm not going to put my white robe on and ask to walk down the beach and hold your hand while I explain this to
I'm not going to hold your hand.
Hey, Hutch. You know what?
Yes,
I would say this. You guys, as long as people know that this is what your opinion is, you guys do not have to be in any way, shape, or form ashamed of proffering a well-researched opinion, because I would say that these opinions on this call are probably some of the most well-researched, well-informed opinions in this investment. That's exactly what people would like to hear, and I don't think you have.
And thank you for that.
You don't have to be ashamed of saying these are the things that we see on a daily basis, and this is what we think. So,
and I appreciate that. I truly do. And I mean, that that the amount of time that we put into this and the effort, and all the behind the scenes stuff that we do, where we're bouncing this off of that one, and hey, did you see this? Well, wait, did you see that? And until it comes to what we call the call, every Tuesday. But it's again, we're fact driven. That's it. I know some say no hype or whatever. With us, it's just the facts, ma'am. That's all.
Yeah, and I don't think anything we're talking about tonight is even going to, implement hype. I think I think all of these things, especially this first one that I think you're starting with.
Number 10.
I mean, come on, you get your LOIs out and let's roll. Right down the list.
Let's rock and roll.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Well, we've done all the small talk, so here we go. Number 10, drum roll, please. The Iraqi banking sector strengthens position in Arabic and international arenas. This is a biggie.
Yeah. And I just got to say this, guys, to start off with, okay? If you've even scanned the LOI for off of the first review of the SBA, and you just start reading the content of this article, and I'm just going to just one by one go down the list right here and just ask you all with a yes or no, does this sound familiar to you? Okay, so the part in there where they're talking about expanding and improving their Arabic and Islamic banking services and so forth, that sound familiar?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Somebody's getting out of range. I hear some radio wave thing going on in the background.
I'm stationary.
There we go. Yeah, me too. All righty. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Art.
Okay, so that everybody's heard before, and that's
right.
Directly mentioned in that news piece. IAS and IFRS disclosure auditing by the international company Ernst & Young. Anybody remember that?
Big
Hearing
stuff.
That's been on more than one LOI.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay, and what they're talking about with this Ernst & Young thing, which is one of the things I thought was the most important and most interesting of all this, because of other news that's come in even since this article came out, was the fact that they're basically this is standard implementation review and analysis, and basically what they're going to do as these analysis reports are done from these banks, okay, is they are going to use the data from those review statements to classify and rank these banks. And the reason I thought that was really, really important, over and above the fact that there is what it does is it kind of instills an aura or an environment of healthy competitivism within the banking sector. Because think about it, guys, if you're ranked let's just say number 78 on their 100 list as a bank, don't you strive to be number 50 or number 25 or number 2 as
Correct.
far as your services and performance and so forth?
Oh, absolutely.
You want to be the leader, right? Like in the sector, right? And the other reason why that classification and ranking was very important came out today in today's news, which is that the the CBI is using, and the auditing committee within the CBI is using those performance statements as criteria for banks that are allowed to continue to participate in the auction program. So guess what? If you're not, this is sort of like the Animal House being on double secret probation. If you're not pulling the grades and doing the, getting the mark, you're not.
That's right.
You're not participating in the auction. So these banks, both from a healthy, competitive side, instilling that competitive drive within the banking sector, which is going to do nothing but the old adage, steel sharpens steel. I mean, so as they're competing with each other, their standards are going to rise, and services rise. And and then secondly, obviously, you're using it as a measuring stick for the banks that are, the banks that deserve to be a part of the auction system, and the ones who don't.
That's exactly right. To earn it.
And Robert, I think there's another element to that too. It also identifies the level of monitoring that the CBI will be doing, along with Ernst & Young, on these banks that are on the lower end of the scales, on the ranking. And so not only does it define what they're allowed to do, it will also help define how much over-the-shoulder looking that will be done by the CBI. And no bank wants to have the CBI camping in their backyard, so they don't want to be on the bottom of that list.
Right. That's a great point.
Robert, I think this also goes a bit further. I think this is the CBI saying to the region, the Gulf region, as well as the rest of the international community, that, hey, you want a piece of us? Well, guess what? We are now meeting the international standards. We're not just meeting our internal standards, the requirements from, those LOIs, let's say, but we are re-entering the Arab and international banking arena. And guess what? Ernst & Young. You know who Ernst & Young is? They're the ones that probably do your auditing too. This is what they have to say. I think this is another opportunity. Well, it isn't an opportunity. I think the central bank has taken the opportunity to basically pat themselves on the back and pound their chest.
Right.
Basically, it's step up or step aside.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but Mr. White, I think that's absolutely such a great point, because they are chest thumping right now, and they've got a lot to be proud of with all the work that, the due diligence that they're putting in here, the complete restructuring of their entire banking system to meet the needs of this transition economy that they're moving toward, and the fact that they are very quickly embracing all this, and it's just an awesome sight to watch and follow along and be a part of along the way. So just really quickly, those performance statements that the Ernst & Young is looking at, they actually identified the fact they're going to go back to 2015. So they're going to look at these banks. They've got a sort of a template that they're putting these banks all through, like a performance standard template that dates back to 2015. They're going to assess and review, and then based on their findings, they're going to publish these rankings, and even told us how they're going to use those rankings. So again, everyone, if my voice sounds excited, it's because every one of those things I just rattled off. I mean, just in that short list right there. Okay, take your LOIs out. Okay, this isn't one man or one group's opinion on something. This is something that's coming from 100% verbatim from the IMF. Matter of fact, the day that this came out, I even put the I cut and pasted the actual sections out of the LOI that relate to these things, and another story we're going to do later on too with the IBAN stuff. So so other than the 2015 one, which I think everybody said yes to, right. How about this one? This one sound familiar to anybody? On a yes or no? Adherence to CAMEL standards and adherence to the MOU signed with the World Bank toward restructuring their banking sector and performance development. You guys, everybody, I'm sure, has been on that CBI website and clicked on that little orange link, up in the upper right-hand corner, and you see their sort of 5-year plan towards what they're going to morph their banking sector into. Well, there's a whole section in there about the CAMEL standards and the fact of, adherence to them and so forth. So, again, right out of the LOI, right out of what their 5-year, action plan is and so forth. And here it is, again, mentioned in this article. So there's another one. The last parts of this article, you guys dealt with the formation of the Supreme Council for Economic Affairs, which basically, this is a council that they want to have that's going to be a part of the decision-making relative to, laws and legislation that are going to impact the economic and investment part of the economy, and give them a voice. They sort of will have their finger on the pulse of what's going on within the market and be able to voice those opinions and, manipulate the legislation so that it's the most effective in creating the most, fertile, investment environment. So, again, all stuff that's verbatim right out of the LOI. And the last one in here, which is something that we've covered before, dealt with and this was a biggie. Okay, the first ever agreement between the Council of the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury and the CBI to monitor the auctions and prevent access to illicit destinations, as well as the exchange and sharing of financial data relating to the sale of foreign currency and its circulation. So,
and there's a couple of things that we're going to be talking about this evening that are major supporters for that particular issue.
Yep, good stuff. It's good that you guys aren't excited, or we wouldn't be able.
I'm going to tell you something right now. If anybody's hearing this stuff, right, and actually, even like I said, if it's a superficial, perusing, a scanning of the LOI, and it's not like curling your toes and giving you like that Grinch that stole Christmas smile, it's I don't know. I don't think you can fog a mirror.
Yep. Well, and here's the good news. You guys are actually voicing some opinions, and we've had a few people. Shannon Rogers even said, listen, we trust your opinions, and let her rip, and lots of people in the chat room saying the same thing, so I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing that. At the same time, I've kind of got to watch our clock just a little bit.
Yep.
Let's move on up to number 9 if we could. Drum roll, please. The central bank initiate labor mail system to sell the dinar.
Guys?
Well, this is actually a part of what we just talked about.
Right.
Because those banks that were ranked high enough to participate in the auctions, this is directly applicable. And they're going to be participating, and there will be a reassessment every 3 months in light of their performance.
And this particular thing, you guys, is also just one more sort of fail-safe mechanism on the part of, assuring that whatever is being turned in at these auction windows as far as invoicing and documentation and certification as to who's getting the money, why it's going, where it's going. This is just another one of the sort of electronic fail-safes that they'll have over and above being able to talk with the border points to see that those goods made it into the country, or they've gone through quality inspection, or that the proper protocol has been followed to check up on the from bank to bank to check up on the IDs and the legitimacy of the parties that are requesting the money. It's just they are dotting the I's and crossing the T's, fellas.
They're using technology. They are taking multiple databases and they're doing comparisons and linking and tying together to make sure that everything says, yes, this is good, or no, this is not good. I'm just really thrilled to see the embracing of the technologies that and now utilizing those technologies to do what they always were intended to do.
Yep.
Absolutely. Let's move on. Number 8, deputy, and it kind of ties again, but auction fad and the continuation of bleeding hard currency.
I think, you guys, that article started off about our friend Tamimi just basically identifying once again, the auctions are bad, water is wet, grass is green, and, anything else obvious that she wants to put out there. But what I thought was interesting, we had, Hutch, did you ever do the other article where they were talking about the alternate to the auction?
Yes,
I think it's in here, right?
Let's see something here. No, it's not. And really kind of what I was hoping for is that you guys would kind of combine this with that in this section here. I'm looking right now. No, it's not. And kind of what I wanted to, if we could, let's combine that in with this right here.
Hey, I think that this article, and I think, Robert, you and I had this conversation a couple of days ago. This is just an accumulation of certain people continuing to remind the central bank that the auctions, and anybody that will listen to them, the auctions has run its course. It served a purpose initially, and now they got to find something else, get rid of the auctions, and we know where we want that to go.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
Hang on, I'm looking real quick.
And guys, we've covered this a whole bunch of times before, but like when it comes to the auctions, they're past the part about just embracing the fact that the auctions fail. Systemically they fail. They're past the point where they're identifying the reasons why they fail. What these guys are saying at the end of it, the net of it, is that it doesn't matter that we acknowledge the fact that they're failing. It doesn't matter that we identify the reasons why they're failing. At the end, the only thing that matters is that they're failing. And no matter what we're doing, whatever mechanisms we have internally to try to fix it, okay, those fixes only last for so long because the level of the breaches have been so deep.
And may I add this, and then I guess we can move on. And a certain somebody answered this person the previous time this person has spoken up, whether it's her or somebody else. And that certain somebody, Ismail Alak, said that the solution to this is not stopping the auctions altogether. He said the solution is to reduce the demand throughout the entire system for the dollar.
Right.
Says that's a solution. Now, he didn't say how he's going to do it, but basically he says, I know what you're saying. I understand it. But stopping them just today isn't the solution. But we do understand what the solution is, and it's reducing the demand for the dollar. And they continue to say they're working on those mechanisms. But go ahead.
Alan, Tamimi has to know this. She's on the Parliament Finance Committee. If she doesn't know that what it takes to eliminate the auctions is the revaluation of the currency, does she need to be on the Finance Committee?
See, and guys, to look at Tamimi politically, with the relationship with the body, Tamimi to a body is like that little piece of corn that gets stuck in your teeth when you're eating corn on the cob. It just can't seem quite to get at it. Any chance that she gets to come out and be, that little fly in the ointment kind of a thing, I think she does it. But I don't think she's doing anything in that but stating the obvious.
And a lot keeps saying, "I've heard you, I've heard you, I've heard you." Why do you keep repeating that? Well, why does anyone keep repeating herself?
Good old Morticia. Okay. Let's move. Let's take number 7 about the economic reforms and the issuance of the sovereign bonds and move that up a little bit. And let's tie the number 6 in, which is the e-commerce flourish in Iraq despite the failure of the banking sector, because we're still kind of on banking. Well, we were just talking about answers to questions for Josie. Her question was, does this article speak of what will replace the currency auctions? You know, and I think that was a great way for you guys to answer her question for her. Okay. So let's move on to this one here, if we could, guys, if you don't mind. E-commerce flourish in Iraq despite the failure of the banking sector. And then I'll bring number 7 in here in a bit.
Right. That article, guys, I thought was so spectacular from the standpoint, but basically what they're saying there is that Iraqis are not an ignorant people. You know, they're up on technology, they're up on fashion trends, and you know, we don't as a nation, maybe a lot of us don't think of them in that way, but you know, they you know, they try to stay current with, you know, with clothes and fashion, and in this particular article they outline about how there's a number of entities in Iraq that have online stores, and the one in particular they mentioned was about women's cosmetics. And the fact that, you know, these people are able to access these websites, you know, these online stores, see the products, you know, understand what they are and read about them and everything, and place an order for them. And these people want these products, and they want to engage in this format so badly, in this e-commerce platform format so badly, that they're willing, even though they don't have the full Monty ability to order the things, you know, from countries outside of Iraq and get them into Iraq, they are willing to take hard currency and go to these remittance outlets, pay for these invoices with hard currency remittances. And that's what that article is outlining, just the fact that, hey, you know, they even mention, you guys, one company in there that has 900 employees, and they're delivering their products to every province in the country. And I just think it speaks so well to the potential of e-commerce there, and the fact that, you know, again, more underpinning trending towards where they're heading to, and the fact that, you know, they're already using it. They put it this way: they're using what they're capable of using, and waiting for the rest to, you know, the rest to open up. Which, what do you guys think?
Well, Robert, on top of that, we just saw an article where Zane is now offering their version of Apple Pay. In other words, pay from your smartphone, and so along with the direct deposit to the banks of salaries, the debit cards, it's just one more link to take place, and they're ordering those products directly online and paying for them, and then their products are being delivered. I mean, they're right there.
Right. Yeah. So any kind of like preconceived, you know, notion that these guys are, you know, eons behind as far as just being up to speed with, you know, what's going on, you know, with the rest of the world and so forth. They're not. I mean, not only are they aware of these online stores and goods and that kind of a thing, but they're so engaged in this that they're willing to even be inconvenienced by having to go, you know, with hard currency, you know, get these remittances to pay for the goods that they want. So I just think it goes to show you the sky's the limit when this puppy opens up with, you know, Visa and MasterCard, and, you know, and again tying into IBAN now and inter-border communication with foreign banks and so forth. I think this is huge.
Well, and I don't know that it's mentioned in this article, but I read in one article that before 2020, they're saying just the ordering for internal of Iraq and from Iraqis to Iraqi companies they're saying that that's going to be a $40 billion industry.
Right. And what year is it?
2020. Oh no, it is in this article.
Yeah, it's in this. That's 20, and it's 2017 now. So for folks that were writing in the last show talking about investment opportunities and post revaluing of the currency and stuff. I mean, we've talked before about the travel and tourism sector. I mean, here's a sector right here. They're telling you that you're going to see a $40 billion industry in the next 3 years.
Those slackers. They don't do nothing.
That they are. I agree. Hey, speaking of that, we're talking about banking and that type of stuff. How about the article that comes out, this number 5 here? Raffadane Bank raises interest on deposits. I'd like to have some of that 11% long-term stuff, guys. How crazy is that, huh? They're throwing rates.
Look at what their target market is here. They are doing everything possible to do 2 things: pull more 3-0 notes off of the street, and attract new business into the bank. And because those deposits, that becomes funding for loans to go back out to get the economy triggered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Good stuff. Mr. White, anything about the interest or stuff that they're doing over there with this new deposit program that they're coming out with, this new interest program?
Oh, I'd love to see it. I'd loan them a little bit of mine.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right, let's jump now. We're going to go to number 7, and then we'll kind of be back in order here. Economic reform efforts within Iraq prepares for the issuance of sovereign bonds. I know we talked about this a little bit last week, on our call, where they talked about the $1 billion loan, and there was some confusion going on, where people thought it was just a separate loan and wasn't tied, but it's all tied together here. But, this is pretty exciting that, it's just more confirmation of the U.S. working with Iraq, the way they are.
Yeah, and in the first sentence, it tells you really all that we need to know about. We don't need to know about, whether Maliki is still living in the palace or not, or whether he's going to run for a
province or whatever.
What's important is after the completion of the first step to ensure the sovereign loan, Iraq is prepared for the issuance of sovereign bonds and sell them in the global financial markets. That's what we need. That's what we need to know. They are on the cusp of re-entering the global financial markets. And that's all she wrote, folks.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, we are now at halftime, so to speak. I've got a couple of questions, if we could just take a short one for a minute. If we can address a few of them. They're off subject, so to speak. So I'm looking through. Pablo's question got answered. Let's see. Here's one, if we can answer it quickly, from Caravaggio. Is there a long-term solution for the hydrocarbon law issue? Something short and sweet.
Okay, something short and sweet. My short and sweet, I know I need to be more understanding and more kind and so forth.
Put that away right now.
The hydrocarbon law is a revenue issue within the budget. In my honest opinion, if you don't like my opinion, go see Dinar bets or whatever. It has nothing to do with what we're waiting on. It's another form of income for the government of Iraq when they write the budget.
And the HCL itself, Alan, I'm 100% agree with you. I don't think it has anything to do with what we're looking for here. But the hydrocarbon law itself also includes, the Constitution says that the oil, the resources of Iraq belong to the people. And part of what the hydrocarbon law does is it also identifies and defines a compensation to each of the Iraqis, whether they're living in country or outside of country. It defines compensation that they should receive from the sale of those resources. To do that, they have to have a census. This is so the HCL may get passed, but it's going to have some caveats. It will go into effect when the census is done. I'm throwing this out in the air as an example. I just don't think it has anything to do with what we're looking for. That's just my opinion.
And if I could, Steve, just to even add on to his point, is the fact that there's another big part of 140, okay, that is about the disputed territories, which factors into the same thing. To speak to Day Trader's point, I mean, you're sitting here, folks, with 3.5 million displaced people right now that aren't where they're supposed to be, or not where they're not where they're normally located, and most of those areas have been completely dilapidated, bombed and destroyed back to the Stone Ages. So the notion that all of a sudden these guys are just going to go back up and refill their apartment complexes again and everything's hunky-dory, that's not reality. And not to mention the fact that there are so many long-standing commitments as far as, just take the Kurds, for some of the disputed territories that, okay, we are posting articles, week after week after week that are describing about how the borders to these different provinces and are going to look different when all of the country is completely liberated. They're going to be redrawing borders, boundaries of these different provinces. They're not going to look the same. And they're not going to look the same not only from a visual standpoint, from boundaries and demographics and stuff, but they're not going to look the same based on the governmental makeup, their representation in Parliament, which is why they can't do the elections. They're going to be postponing the elections right now because they don't even know at the end of this what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. So if you're looking at the letter of the law about the 140, there are so many aspects and components of the 140 that just are not logistically, they're not feasible given the environment and given the scope of where they are as a nation right now. Not that it's not ever going to get to that point. It will with all this national reconciliation and so forth. But and then getting back to Mr. White's, talking about the budget and so forth. I mean, they are able to work through the parts about the monies, the budget allocation with these temporary, so long as both parties live up and both parties are capable of living up to the criteria, to the terms of the agreement. So,
outside of the budget aspects of this, Robert, everything else is administrative, and we just, well, first of all, there's the IMF, the World Bank. No one is saying for economic success, for monetary reform, you have to have the HCL.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right, let's move on.
Well, I can tell you, Hutch, what we got to do is we got to talk to BGG about if he's going to get like a little, a little peripheral for the website. Maybe we can get some sound effects and get like a big, like when they jump off the bridge and run into the water, we can get that splash sound in there.
I've been wanting a sound effects machine and something to do that type of thing, and then a little rim shot for when we cut a funny, things like that. So let me work on that for us. I don't know if it's in our budget just yet, but we'll work on that. Let's go on to number 4 here. And again, people, if you can't hear some excitement and if your dots aren't getting connected, get a new pencil. How about number 4 here? A body will soon agree on pipeline transport oil from Iraq through the Jordan line. I think this is a Mr. White comment right here.
I don't know. I think actually Mr. R. Cookie
Maybe it was. Yeah,
was explaining to me the other day,
right.
really just how good this is.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the bottom line is that we know, guys, that there's been ongoing problems with the Kurds, with the amount of oil and where it's going and who's getting it and who's getting the proceeds from it and so forth. There's this project that's in the pipeline, no pun intended, that it's going to run from Basra into Jordan and have capabilities of it was a million barrels a day. So the bottom line is that there was talk the other day that when you got to remember, Abadi had Erdogan in town the one day, and the next day he had this Mulki from Jordan and the majority of the agenda was economic based. Some security stuff in there, but the gist of it is that with the Jordanian side, they are ready to get this pipeline going, as well as the fact that even today, not only did we find out more or less a timeline of when to expect the treble border crossing for reopening again, which they're talking about May, okay, by the amount of months they're talking about. But in addition to that, also other border points with Jordan being implemented as well that will open up before that. So that was kind of exciting to hear, because they're basically talking about, having these security firms come in and secure that main thoroughway through, the treble crossing, and the fact that that all getting done to their satisfaction and so forth would be probably like around May. So in the meantime, they're implementing other border crossings. And by the way, one of the other things that they worked out evidently is the fact that these free trade zones through those, the goods coming in from Jordan that aren't going to be subject to to the new customs tariffs.
Well, and there's more to that too, because that pipeline is going to be extended up into Egypt,
yep.
And which is another market for Iraq for the natural gas.
Right, and that's and natural gas, Steve, and then also oil as well, because the Egyptians are already pounding. As a matter of fact, I can remember to come back to that, because there's some huge Egypt news out today economically as well too. But Egypt's been pounding their fists on the table, wanting their the oil commitment that they've committed to for a couple of weeks now. You see reports in writing about that. So yeah, that's exactly true as well. But this a lot of the little nuanceical problems that they've had, especially with Turkey and Jordan, and these visits, by all accounts, has been ironed out and is looking pretty positive going forward here.
Yep, good stuff. All right, let's move up to the top three, and it's building up here, so to speak. I like this one a lot. It came out today. Looks like Massoum has approved the budget, and it's headed towards the Gazette.
What more can you say about that? But whoopee!
Okay. Yeah.
And guys, somebody asked a question, Hutch. I forget who it was, about what happens. What's the stages? That article.
Yeah.
I think I sent earlier outlines exactly what they what the process is of the budget once it goes to, before it gets to Massoum, once it hits Massoum, and then what it does after.
Right. And there's another one that's asking for stages of MCP and RV and things like that we'll try to get to if we can afterwards. But again, that's big news. It's at the same time. I read somewhere that someone said it was a foregone conclusion. I mean, we knew it was coming. We knew it was going to happen. What's the difference between this year and last year, so to speak? And quite frankly, what is the difference between this year's budget and last year's budget?
Execution.
Yeah.
Execution.
Well,
I mean, the ability for them with the areas that have been liberated, the ability for them to execute against their fiscal plan here.
Right. Which they executed the 2016 budget and they went through it completely. But I follow what you're saying is there's more areas now. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is everything from transfer of powers, everything from the ability for some of these provinces to get funds, allocated funds, go through the proper procedural, channels to get these with the feasibility studies for the projects done, all that kind of that stuff able to be done. Just look at the one area of the 2016 budget that was not executable from the standpoint of the Kurds. The Kurds getting their 17% couldn't happen because they couldn't ship oil through the Seyhan pipeline for the first 5.5 months of the year. So,
right.
Is it disappointing that was an area of the budget that didn't get 100% executed on? Yeah, but the reality of it is that's not, the scope of the landscape didn't allow for that. And they and actually, positive side, they actually had what the fallback was going to be written into the budget. I mean, in the event that either party didn't deliver what they were supposed to do, they have that prorated sliding scale caveat written into the budget. So this year, more so than ever, with all of the subsidy cuts, the salary freezes, the outline, the reform outlines on both revenues and expenditures in the budget, they are, and the fact that they're priced more realistically, you guys, don't you think this year with oil, with where oil seems to be trending to?
Oh yes.
Yeah, and what is the what do you think is the makeup of the budget as they move through 2017? It's concentration, or it's concentrating on what? What type of economy?
Economic growth, the explosion of it.
Yeah, and what did the President of Parliament or the Speaker of the House? How did he describe what would happen legislatively in 2017? That the private economy or the economic-driven economy will
change the face of Iraq forever.
Yes.
Yeah. And another element that's in the budget that everyone tends to forget is there are specific definitions and, in some cases, laws that are really kind of outside the budget but part of it. For example, part of the public financial management law that language has been incorporated into the budget, and now that it's been signed by the President of Iraq, and once it gets published in the Gazette, that part of the PFM becomes law.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to without the budget, the only thing that Iraq could do by their constitution was to pay their bills, their operating expenses. None of that other stuff, none of the capital budget side could be spent, not a dime of it, and all of these other little snippets of laws that are included in the language in that budget become law once it's posted in the Gazette.
Great point.
That's very significant. That's big.
Yep, pretty stout. All right, let's move on to number 2. The central bank announces the adoption of the International Mathematical Number, IBAN, and makes all the conversions. That IBAN makes all the conversions. It's the International Bank Account Number. That's pretty big news, guys.
This is some of the biggest news I think I have seen.
Yeah. Can you hear the drum roll in the background?
Can we first start off with not so much excitement and some level-headedness, because
why?
There's some people that are being posted on several different sites that are saying in itself that IBAN is Article 8. In one shape, form, or another. And
good point.
First, And thank you very much, R. Cookie, for putting out this information. And for those that have not seen this, let me just throw this in here real quick. The International Bank Account Number, IBAN, is an internationally agreed system of identifying bank accounts across national borders to facilitate the communication and processing of cross-border transactions with a reduced risk of transcription errors. It was originally adopted by not the United Nations, not the International Monetary Fund, not Article 8, not Article 1, not any of that stuff, but instead by the European Committee for Banking Standards. Okay? This was a committee put together in Europe, and it was initially implemented through the Middle East and the Caribbean. And something else, as of this past February, only 69 countries used IBAN. There are 185 countries that are members of the IMF. So if this was Article 8, I mean, there's a bunch of members of the IMF missing out on Article 8 IBAN. But it's not Article 8 IBAN. It's just IBAN. It's a financial industry process of transmitting money electronically from one country to the other. Now, you all can pick up from there.
Oh, that's well said, Alan.
Yep. There's one. Hey, in fact, let me throw this in there as you're doing your Article 8s and Article 7s and 14s and whatever else you may be bringing in. F. Metz asked a question while we're talking about IBAN here. Still in Article 7, moving money internationally, with a question mark, or Article 8? And if still in 7, what needs to happen to be moved to 8? And then the second part of his question is, they implement IBAN on the 2nd, January 2nd, and then 2 days later move the rate, meaning from, 1182 to 1184. That's listed on the CBI. Is this just a trial run, or is there any my question is there any relevance at all?
What's Article 7? I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, and that's what he's saying.
I think what he's saying, Alan, is this an Article 8 criterion, and if that's what it is, I mean, we covered this many times, but it
right.
is not. When you're saying what do they need to do, what's the list of things they need to do to transition into Article 8? We've covered this and talked about this.
We had an entire show on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, going back to the LOIs, it's completely spelled out. This is not opinion, and it's not conjecture. They've come out and told us exactly what with MCPs and certain exchange restrictions and so forth. And the IMF has come out and said that Iraq is not in violation or in breach of any existing or is not currently in any breaches relative to Article 8. Matter of fact,
right.
We've even posted a thing at one time when they were in breach.
The last one was the Section 5, right. Where they put the brochure out. Exactly,
where they had a flyer that
right.
went out. Iraq corrected it completely to their satisfaction. And this is, I'm going to try to say this once again, okay? The way that you know that they're not in any breach, okay, of any things that have to do with Article 8. And this is what's so infuriating about these folks that don't understand this, okay? These gurus that make these claims. Okay, guys, do you remember when we went all this up? What is the actual penalty when you are in breach of Article 8? Obligations, any of those obligations, what is the penalty that the IMF
they remove your access to SDR?
That's exactly right. And right. I'm sorry, what did they just get done going through their first review for, and already have received 2 out of the 3 first installments of their thing? Okay.
A loan based on SDRs. Alone. Billions and billions of dollars worth of loan based upon Iraq's ability to access their SDRs. That if they were in breach of, in violation of, they'd get their hands slapped and say, stay away from it. You can't use it.
You get subby's boots.
And that's the only thing I would say to people. The way that some of these guys talk, it's like there's some mystery dance or, totem that needs to get carved in order for them to get. No, they've already accepted and are in compliance with everything that has to do with Article 8. The only thing that they're, and again, if there's no other just complete, foolproof evidence to that, they wouldn't have gotten this SBA and the others that they did prior to this if they were in breach of anything that circumvented Article 8.
Okay. Now,
yeah. In fact, SMES comes on and says 7 is where their rate was reduced to the program rate during the time of war.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not here. They're all that's changed. But adding on to what R. Cookie was saying, there are some people listening to this or going to listen to it and going to go, but if you're right, and I agree with you, Robert, I'm even a little bit more radical than that. But if they are in compliance with Article 8, and in truth they're in Article 14, which is a transition fully into Article 8, but they're in transition because they are basically been in a state of war over the past 2 years, and there's things beyond their control that they can't correct yet, and the IMF understands that. So the IMF is happy with them, but I'm adding, I'm sort of digressing here. But, gee, Mr. R. Cookie, if I'm to believe you, then why haven't they revalued yet? Because I'm told for years after years that if they're Article 8, they're going to revalue and their currency is going to become international. So what are we waiting on? So they must not be in Article 8. So what's the answer to that? It goes back to, and one of these things may very well be, something as simple that's in front of our noses. And Mr. Flannery with Citibank said it. Removing the obstacles to the free flow of the Iraqi currency around the globe. Removing obstacles. One might be something like IBAN, which we're going to talk about.
I think part of the confusion, guys, comes from who was it that put the program rate on Iraq? It wasn't the IMF.
No.
It was the United Nations.
Right, UN.
Okay. So any of the articles with the IMF have nothing to do with the program rate.
Other than, as far as like within the scope of the introduction to LOIs, talking about what the program rate is and the fact that they've got a de facto peg to the dollar, and that.
Sure,
kind of thing.
but that's.
But it's not.
The IMF didn't put the program rate on Iraq, and the IMF is focusing on two things: monetary reform, but more importantly, economic reform, because both of those have to work in conjunction with each other, or if you try to do one without the other, you will fail.
Can I have a moment to try to answer my question as to if I was Iraq and I was in such a sorry state financially and economically over the past 10 years, and I had a choice of doing it by myself and coming up with agreements with other countries to trade with me based on my own currency, or I could follow the suggestions of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, because, folks, whether a country follows those recommendations and adheres to those articles is up to the individual country. But the IMF will tell the world, hey, if you do this, and we call these things, these requirements, best practices, meaning you practice what we say. You do these things. The proper way to do them, you will be more successful. So if I'm Iraq and I say, hey, you know what? If I go ahead and I follow this and I do what these people are suggesting, they're going to loan all this money to me, and they're going to help me rebuild my financial institutions, my banks, and will help with the infrastructure. And they're going to basically help rebuild my country, and then I will be ready to enter the world financial and economic markets and so forth, and I will be successful. And that's what they've been doing. And that's and they're getting ready to do exactly what we want them to do.
And Mr. White, to speak to your point right now, I'm going to nail this puppy home, okay? Think about this, everyone, okay? The original LOI, okay, that actually mentions the IBAN from the IMF, like it said, IMF sort of mandate, written mandate that talks about, the implementation of IBAN and, a brief synopsis of what it is and so forth, is 2014. And, guys, we were talking about this, both yesterday and today, about the fact that think about going back to, 2014. Okay, obviously, like Mr. White outlined, keeping in mind what the definition of IBAN is and what it actually encompasses and what it means and how it's utilized, right? Okay, the technology and the ability for them, back when the IMF first started guiding them and first started suggesting and inferring this in these written LOIs, is in 2014. They had the capability to do to implement IBAN back then, right? Anybody disagree at all?
No,
I don't think there was any restriction. They just no. I agree.
Okay, and Dave, that's my I guess that's my point, is the fact that the ability. It's not like this is a system that was too expensive and they couldn't afford it. It's not like other kinds of internal underpinnings weren't there for them to do it, other than the fact, and just ask yourself this, why was it just launched on January 2nd? Not talking about it more, like they did. And again, that means the 2014 LOI, it had it in it. That means the one 2014, 2015, 2 in 2016 had it in it, and then it launches in January 2nd of 2017. Why? Why all of a sudden?
Okay, before you answer why, explain clearly to those listening what that actually does for them. What does IBAN actually do for all of those banks before having it, and now the fact that they do have it? And I think that would.
Yeah, it affords an interface. It affords an error-free or as close to error-free interface with the banks, settlements and so forth.
For communication.
And again, think back to that other article when we were talking about, here's e-commerce thriving, basically in spite of itself within Iraq. Because why? Because of the failure of the banking system. Well, what part of it did they outline was the failure? Well, the fact that they don't have the ability to pay for these online purchases, these e-commerce platform purchases with plastic, with electronic currency, with Visa and MasterCard. So this opens themselves up to a full Monty, a full scale, a full e-commerce platform service to their people. And I can't possibly be more excited about this because, again, I look back, I pull up the LOI from 2014, I see it first mentioned in there, and of course the first question I say to myself is why? Why didn't they do it back then? They did along with IFMIS and along with, PIM and along with, IDMS and all the other things that they've been asked to do, a single treasury account, all these other little, mandates they've been asked for. Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they do it back then? They could have done it because their system was just not. They were not ready internally within their banking sector to make that move, to go global, to go international, and open their currency up to that market at that time, to the global market at that time. That's
so
fine.
in other words, what you're saying, Robert, if I wanted to send something to Ahmed that has a bank account at the Bank of Babylon, downtown Baghdad, and we agree on some purchase or whatever, and I was going to wire $1,000 to Ahmed prior to the 2nd of January, I would not have had that capability, or his bank would not have had the capability of receiving my wire. But now I can do it.
Well, and Mr. White, what they're basically saying in that other article about the e-commerce and the failure of the banking system is that in that case study that you just mentioned, that person would go with hard currency, okay, see their online good that they want or whatever, service that they want, and go on. But when it came to actually paying for it, because they're devoid of the ability to be able to electronically execute that, they are going to a remittance entity and with hard currency paying for it, and then it be wired via that remittance entity. And that's what they're outlining in there. It's not a full it has not been a full service e-commerce platform that the people could take full advantage of yet. And
until now.
Yeah.
Up
exactly.
until now. Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Wow. This is it's good stuff. Big stuff. This is big stuff. And it's all part of a process, as we can tell. Let's move on to number one, which I think is quite important. And there's been some great stuff that's come from this place before. Number one, Iraq participates in the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, which starts this next Tuesday. I think that's big news. Again, I love seeing it when they go there. Every time I've paid attention to it, a body makes some of the best speeches and encouraging speeches from Davos. He kind of lets the cat out of the bag a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's good if people could just if they could remember, and I know there's a lot of new people on here, but a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, when he stood on the stage, and who's there? World Economic Forum. These are the movers and shakers within the international financial community. This is huge, and he stood on that stage, and he told all these folks, and he said, we have challenges, and this is at the height. I mean, this is he's just taken office, and everything is going to where in a handbasket. ISIS is running through a third of his country, and the national media is describing Iraq as swirling off into the abyss, imploding. Iraq's never going to be the same place. And he had the guts and the leadership to stand up on that stage and said, we've got our challenges, but we're going to meet our challenges. And when we do, Iraq is going to join you on this stage. And I think he's in the process of doing that. And I can just imagine of the entities, the folks, the people behind what's needed to partner with Iraq and for Iraq to re-engage in the financial markets. That's them. And my opinion, he's finishing up the handshakes and he's tying things together. And what better place to do it?
Trophy. Yep. Or Cookie? Or Day
Mr.
Trader?
Day?
I think this is huge from the standpoint, but yes, it is a platform, and a body is going, but I think he's going to have quite an entourage with him, and I really think that outside of the formal sessions, I think that's where the majority of the business takes places. I mean, that's the way it was when I was in the corporate world. You basically had social interaction with these people. You started talking to someone about a particular project. They had tools that would help you complete your project, And so you basically struck a gentleman's agreement with a handshake and said, okay, I'm going to have my technical people get together with your technical people, and we're going to hammer this out and move forward. And I think that is where the real value comes from, because of the type of players that are going to be and have always been at this forum.
I agree. Our cookie.
Great points. Yep. Great
How about
points.
you?
No, I think that. I mean, that's.
It's hard to get better than those two. That's right. That's right. Well, again, I think it's really, really big news. We've covered our top 10 list of what we thought was the biggest news of the week. And quite frankly, it's the biggest news of the year. And you can almost say that including 2016, quite frankly, because it's all coming together now. And we're actually seeing the dots being connected to where we see a picture now, and we see where we're at and where we're going,
and we didn't even talk about Mosul.
No,
yeah.
And that's exciting
Maliki.
in itself. Well, we don't have to.
Well,
that's right.
One of those deserves discussion, the other one doesn't.
Good point. But in closing here, if we could put together a synopsis of all of this news that we just covered in this last hour and 22 minutes, in a short paragraph, what would each of you say?
Day, you know what? Let's condense. I'll let Mr. White and Day, because Day, the other day you had the perfect analog for that.
I saw this as a confluence of multiple rivers all coming together into one large river, and each of those subsidiary or tertiary rivers were creating turbulence as it entered the big river, and I think that's what's going to happen. We're seeing this convergence or confluence of these rivers, and the turbulence starts when they actually revalue their currency. And 300 yards down the river, everything smooths out and starts running. They're going to have a real challenge in front of them when they the logistics associated with changing the value of their currency. But as we've said before, to me, that is the trigger point for the economic growth. Alan called it the blasting cap, and I think that's really, really appropriate. To kick off that dynamite going forward. So that's what I see is that turbulence right there at the confluence of those multiple rivers coming together.
Great job.
Old Man River, the mighty Missouri.
Mr. White, any final closing words?
No way. I'm not going to.
Come on now.
Try that. No, it's I think a day trader described it perfectly.
Yeah,
trying to follow Tony Bennett. Are you kidding me?
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah,
I wish I could sing like he did.
That's right. We are in an exciting time. We really are, guys. And it's just as we see all the pieces of the puzzle coming together, like I said, we do see the whole big picture now. And people that I talk to, once a month or once a week, they'll call and say, okay, well, what is it this time or whatever. And they're talking about future plans now because they can see it's here. We're right on top of it, and it really is an exciting time. I want to thank you guys for coming in and breaking it down the way you do, and for all the hard work and effort and the time that you put into this on a daily basis, and to make it compile into what it became tonight on this call. I want to thank all the copiers and mods in the chat room, BGG and Miss BGG, all the folks over at on the Facebook side with Kathy Keller and Pat and One Bobby and Julian, and so all of those guys over there that do a great job as well. I want to thank Subby especially for helping with the news time that she does each and every time. So again, BGG, are you around?
I am. Thank you, Hutch. Fantastic call, everyone tonight. You guys did a wonderful job of commenting on the current current state of events. Is that it? You want me to sign her off?
Yes, sir. Push that big red button.
It's around here somewhere. Well,
bottom,
you know what?
bottom drawer on the right.
I can't find the go button, so stay tuned to Dinar Updates for more Dinar news, Dinar info, and Dinar commentary. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great night.